To rent or to buy? There's always that question. I was just watching the first draft of the video and I realized it's important to mention this is not about money. This is about what to do when you're moving to a new city for the first time, when you are developing as a person. And listen, the money's gonna be all the same in the end, but it's about living in the right place and knowing where to live and how to position that to further your life along. So if you want to know just about money, watch this video. It has millions of views. It's a great one. I've watched it myself. But if you want my perspective on living in a big city and the different things that you can do, then keep watching. I spent the last couple of months in a place I own. I spent the last few years in a place I rented. And for 12 or so years before that, I lived in numerous places that I owned. So I think I'm pretty well versed on this topic, and I always think it's disingenuous when you have someone who's in this business as a realtor telling you what you should do or not do. The reality is there's a time and a place for renting, and there's a time and a place for owning, and there's different properties that make sense to own or to rent. So let me break down my experience. I lived in an 𝗲𝗍𝗔𝗓 property for the last 3 years or so. It was new construction. It was right into the pandemic, and they were offering incentives that I thought were great. And going into a unit that no one lived in before with this spectacular, glorious view was very appealing to me. And I knew that after the fact, my wife and I were gonna have children, and we had our baby right there in the unit, home birth. It was awesome. Watch our podcast with our midwife, Sarah. But anyway, living in that building was fantastic. And what we rented, you could never own. We had something with 2 pools, a bowling alley, full spa, gym, kids room, sky lounge, chef's kitchen, all these different amenities you'll never find in a condo building. They just don't do them that way anymore. There are exceptions to that. You can see them in the St. Regis and a few other buildings, but apartment buildings have to appeal to a renter. They have to stay marketable. You'll see them do their lobbies like every 5 years, and a lot of times it's not even necessary, but they're doing it to keep up with the supply and demand with renters and apartments in the city. In Chicago, you always see some cranes in the sky. You're gonna see less of those moving forward, but for over a decade, we've just seen crane after crane, new apartment building after new apartment building, and they were all keeping up with each other, doing this amenity race to the death, right? And what that did, especially in the last few years, is provide a great opportunity for savvy renters. For me, I thought about putting down the down payment and the disposition costs, which are typically between 7 and 10% every time you sell something, and figured, you know what, whenever we find the right property for us, we're gonna wanna get out of that quickly, right? So it just made sense for us to rent. On top of that, because we were having the family, I wanted to live in one of these buildings. We were excited to. It was a good feeling. There were all these incentives, all these new people. I lived in a number of condo buildings where, for no better way to put it, people were going to end their lives, right? This is the last place they were going to live in. They were most likely going to die there. It was a breath of fresh air to go to a new building with a bunch of younger people that I could actually relate with, talk to, and they were also on the same page of life. They were starting their life. Entrepreneurs, business owners, lots of consultants, lots of people working, good jobs, good people, good income, good credit, all of those things. And what people don't want to talk about is if you're new to a city and you want to meet people, well, a bar probably isn't the best place for you, but you know what is? A place that does the natural filtering itself. Okay, there's a lot of places you can go in the city, but it can be hard to meet like-minded people. So what you can do, if I'm squinting a little bit, I apologize, the sun just came right through the clouds. So what I really recommend is if you're new to a city, rent in one of these, like max out your budget, okay? Don't eat out, bring all your food home, live in this building and make friends. Make friends that you're not gonna have access to any other way. It's hard to meet the people that can afford $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. It's not everyday people. And I say that because a lot of people move to the city and they want to associate themselves with people on their tier, or they want to go up. They want to have friends that are above their caliber, whatever it is. Or maybe they're aspiring and trying to be someone that they're not yet, right? They just got the job. They're trying to be someone else. They're trying to move up in life. It's not like they're trying to be somebody else. But they have this image of their future self, and they're trying to be their future self. Well, the way to do that is to be around people who have already done it. That was one of the most surprising things to me. It's something I knew, but nothing I had experienced before, because I lived in so many condo buildings that just had a completely different demographic, a completely different audience, a completely different experience. Your interactions on the elevator are basically none. As opposed to the building I moved into, I had interactions every day. I met more people in the sauna in my first month of living there than I had met in 6 years in my past building. Think about that. So I really enjoyed the experience. The finishes were beautiful, but they also, what was nice, it was something I didn't have to worry about. It was really great every time a light bulb went out. Hey, can you deal with this? When my wife was pregnant or when we had the baby, not having to worry about anything inside the unit. And just being able to have this carefree lifestyle. Every place I lived in before that, I had rehab, then I had to take the time to do it and put up the money and the expense and the headaches. And it's not real headaches, I enjoy doing this stuff. But just having none of that on my brain was something I never experienced before, because I've been flipping all these properties that I lived in for so long. And while it's fun, it's still taxing. Regardless of the enjoyment or the pleasure you get from it, it takes a lot out of you to put this together. It was really nice not having to worry about any of that. And then funneling that money into the stock market in the meanwhile was even better. That's something a lot of people are not going to share with you. They're gonna share all these rent calculators, rent versus buy. Well, the only rent versus buy calculator you need to know about is the one from the New York Times. It takes multiple things into consideration, not just the obvious things that realtors or mortgage brokers want to talk about. Because I believe there's a time and a place for renting, and for me, the time and place was now. And now we're living in a building that we bought, that we're rehabbing, and we're gonna have people living below us subsidize the mortgage and take care of the mortgage every month. That's gonna be a great feeling, because right now we're setting ourselves up for wealth and success in the future with the property. And we have double the space. How about that? That's one of the things I did not think about when we were renting. Somehow we moved out of that 1,100 or so square feet, and everything without question fit into our new place, and there might even be too much for the new place. So we were really crammed in this place, and you have to make, I'm not gonna call them sacrifices, you just have to make decisions about how you wanna live. And I enjoyed it. I loved coming home to that view every single day, southwest, all of downtown, completely unobstructed, arguably one of the best views there is. What was funny, when we moved to the new home, the only thing that I missed was having a gym and the elevator. I definitely am working out less right now. I had to figure it out into my schedule. Now I'm waking up at 5 and waking up at like 4:45, going to the gym at 5, as opposed to before, I would just take a midday break or an evening break and do that after I'd put Ezra down. Now I can't do that. Either the gym's hours prevent me from doing it, or there's no way to really fit it into the day otherwise. What I really enjoy too about owning a place is what I call the obligatory hellos and the geographical friends. So when you're renting, there are just people you see every day. And maybe you talk to them in the beginning, or maybe you did a wave once, or maybe you had a chit chat here and there, but you forget their names, you forget who they are, and it becomes almost awkward over time. You also have the obligatory hellos and goodbyes with the door people. Now, the door people were great in this building. I loved them, but at the end of the day, I'm not level every day. I'm not the same cheery, chippy self. Sometimes I don't feel like saying hello, and sometimes I don't feel like saying goodbye. And some days I don't want to see anybody, and I just want to get out of the building. You end up taking a back entrance and might add a few minutes to your day, but you do it just because. Now, all the services in the apartment building are top notch. We had a really solid experience at 𝗦𝗍𝗔𝗓. I recommend anyone go there. If you've heard me talk about it before, they don't sell their buildings. Everything is quality. Everything is planned. Everything is done with longevity, as opposed to a number of the buildings you see in Chicago, like almost all of them, are meant to stabilize, which means to rent them out above 95%, get as close to full occupancy as possible, and then they find the Teachers Fund of Iowa, the pension fund of the teachers union in Ohio, and they buy it as a safe investment, a secure investment. And the developer developed the project for, let's say, 100 million, sell it for 125, and just take a cool 20 million off the top. Sounds good, doesn't it? There's a lot of risk. But the point is, 𝗦𝗨𝗕 doesn't do that. 𝗦𝗨𝗕 is a family-owned company. They keep all the money, all the buildings within, and they self-manage, they self-develop, they do it all themselves. So this isn't meant to be an 𝗦𝗨𝗕 commercial, but I've been in a lot of buildings throughout Chicago, and I'm the most impressed with them because of their finishes, their fit, their everything, really the whole experience. Now, in an apartment building, you also have some shenanigans. Like, you have to deal with some nonsense, okay? It's just a lot of people under one roof. And usually it's fine. You don't deal with it a lot, but every once in a while you do. Now, what's great is I never hurt anybody. I don't know if they hurt us, but it was really nice not having to worry about self-censoring yourself for those around you. It was really nice seeing that I could go home, complete peace and quiet, and the only thing I heard is what I heard when I got off the elevator with all the dogs coming. And I'm sure people heard our baby, right? It's definitely part of multi-family living. Thinking about having a home now, there's already all this time that is sucked away from me dealing with a home. Now I have a building, it's a bigger project, there's more things going on, but something people never talk about when owning condos, which is what I owned for years. And if I was gonna do it again, I wouldn't own elevator condo units. They just don't appreciate that well. If you think about it, you have an HOA that is always going up. You have taxes that are always going up. So what does that do to your price? It pushes your price down, as opposed to owning a building where the land is worth more, the building depreciates, you get to take that depreciation, but the rents are naturally going up in certain areas, so you can make educated guesses on what's going to go up and what's going to happen. And a lot of people have done very well doing that. And the only reason I made money on every condo I own is because I bought it from someone who died. No joke. I mean, almost every time I bought it from someone who passed away, and I bought it at a bottom price because I had to put $50, $80, $100,000 into it to bring it up to today's standards. And what I ended up doing was over improving the unit because I was going to live there. I had to make it nice for myself, but really it hurt my bottom line in the end. And every single one of them, I had 2.5%, 3.5% interest rates, and I still sold them. And when I was rehabbing them, I always thought I was going to hold on to them. My general advice is stay away from elevator condo buildings with dozens and dozens of units. I think the smaller buildings with like 30 units, 11 units, 15, those are great. Those are phenomenal. Those are great locations. I'm talking about high rises where an HOA is dictating terms for you. I remember I had a situation at 2800 Lakeshore Drive where I lived once upon a time. Very amateur for myself, bought a place, really didn't know what I was doing. I was a realtor, but it's my first time really getting into the territory. I owned places that I had rented before that, but I didn't own the place that I lived in. So I lived there. I had disputes with the HOA all the time over the smallest things. They really ran that building like I should be privileged to be there, that I should be happy that I was allowed to live there, and I was really treated like a tenant. At least that was my perception of a tenant. And then going into an apartment building, they want you to pay rent. Now, it doesn't mean they're gonna bend over backwards for you, but they really did try to make the experience as good as possible. And the cleaning, oh my God. So if you don't have kids, or if you have kids, the cleanup is absurd. I mean, cleaning up after your child is just an unreal experience. Now he's almost 15 months, and he's the little scientist, right? He's just doing experiments everywhere, learning what things sound, what they hear like, what they touch, what it feels like, everything, right? Well, his food is everywhere. And now, like when he's eating rice, we just let it dry and vacuum it later, because what's the point right now? It is such an undertaking. I'm not proud of this, but there's a dining room there, and we'd go there with Ezra, and we'd clean up, but we didn't do the best job. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. And it was really nice to not have to deal with that, to really have zero responsibility and be able to sit down somewhere, make a mess, and walk away from it is something you really take for granted. I mean, I was just dusting my doormat outside my door the other day, and I'm like, you know, I don't know, this is still going on my property. It's going into my whole courtyard here. Do I really want to do it this way? Should I be vacuuming this inside instead? And you can imagine the OCD kicking in and just going one after the other with everything. And in an apartment building, I didn't think about any of that. So if you're starting your life, if you don't know where you're going to be in 5 years, if you don't need a place just for status, if you want a place to meet people, I think an apartment building is a great option for you, especially if you're not rooted to Chicago yet. If you're brand new here, always rent. There's a few times where I recommend you buy, but most of the time, almost always, it's gonna make the most sense to rent something, get your bearings, figure out what neighborhoods you really like, and then call me. We'll find the right place for you, and we'll make smart decisions. Now, I said I don't like condos, right? You know what I do like is I like condos in walk-up buildings or smaller buildings. What I'm specifically referring to, which are generally bad investments, are large elevator, high-rise condo buildings that the building only gets older, the buildings around it only get newer, and that's what people talk about. That's what people don't talk about. People see all these buildings go up, and all the time I hear these glass half empty people like, who's gonna live there? Who's gonna buy that? Everybody. It's new, okay? You know what the real struggle is all the older buildings. The older 8-foot ceilings, no laundry in unit, phenomenal view, phenomenal location. But that's it. I have in-wall air conditioning units. I want central air, elevator, washing machine, every amenity you could think of. And the last building I was in had a bowling alley. How cool is that? And I use that thing, okay? You think you might not? I enjoyed it. I learned how to bowl. So if you're buying or you're renting or you're thinking about what to do, I hope you watch this video and I hope it gives you some guidance on the best decision to make. Thanks for watching.